Today's daf is daf Ayin Vav, which we began yesterday, if you recall, with the story of Rav Bibi Bar Abaye and Rav Papi in the case of Istam Guvtsa de Shivchas Zora. And you may recall that Rav Papi addressed Rav Bibi and he said, Mishum da asu mimuloi on the top of Ayin Vav. It means he came from the family of Elia Cohen. So Abaye, the father of Rabbi Bivi, was a descendant of Eli the Cohen Gadol. And members of this family died at a young age as a result of a curse that was placed on their family. They were called muloi, the truncated ones, because their lives were cut short. And the point of Rav Papi in this case was that b'mkoma mevashla, but shalom b'mkoma lo mevashla. That one who discharges his semen through the urine tube, according to you, Rav Bivi, is capable of fathering children, and that's an incorrect premise, because when semen is in the proper place, it is potent, but when it's not in the proper place, it does not become potent. So when the semen is discharged through the semen tube, it develops into potent semen that is fertile. And since this condition brought about by an active man renders one incapable of fathering children, it is encompassed by the Petzuadak and Shufcha prohibitions. And this, we said, was apparently a result of an active man. Omer of Yehuda, Omer Shmuel, Nikev v'nistam, if his organ was punctured and then it was sealed, the puncture was sealed, there was a minute puncture in the member that closed and is now indiscernible. Kol she'ilu nikre v'nikra, if this situation, wherever the situation is one in which if he were to discharge semen, the hole would rip open and the semen would be discharged through the hole, possible. But v'ilav kosher, if it would not rip open, he is fit to marry into the kol. So it means if the hole is so large that if he were to discharge semen, the force of the accumulated semen would cause the hole to rip open and widen, and the semen would drip from it, he is unfit. For since the semen drips out through the hole, does not shoot like an arrow, it cannot fertilize. There won't be any conception. So he's in a roy laholi. In the Masechet he says, Kol nekev shu gadol kol kach, at she'ilu ha'ish hahu nikre, roa keri, v'nikra, u'misrachev ha'nekev machmas dochak ha'shich zor she'mitzasef sham, harei u'posel v'im lav, she'ein ha'nekev nikra, u'misrachev she'roa keri, harei u'kosher. Havi bar Rava. Rava analyzed this halacha. Heicha. Where was this puncture? If it was a hole below the corona, that means in the fleshy head, at the end of the member, is afilu nichras nami. Even if the member was severed entirely at that point, he would still be fit. Ella b'Torah atzma, or rather, Shmuel's ruling refers to where the puncture was in the corona itself. So we learned in the Mishnah, and it's certain that a mere puncture at that point does not render him unfit. Rava takes for granted that Shmuel cannot be referring to a hole above the corona towards the body, because there it is most certain that the discharge of semen would not rip open the sealed hole, for it is only in the lower part of the member, near the semen's normal point of exit from the member, that the semen accumulates and exerts pressure. So Rava histapek ba'alochazu heicha heichanu makom hanekev begid sha'olav nemru divrei Shmuel. Hare im hanekev hasasu lemala me'atara yesh lachshiro af below livdok imu nikra b'shas eri shekain ein azer misasef v'dochek el samuch lepi ha'ama shesham nekev yitziasa, but not in the nekev in the gid sha'olav. Ilema, if you're going to say im tomer shemiduber shanekev samuch lepi ha'ama, azai imu lemata me'ator v'adei kosher shafilu nichras hagid sham legamrei nami gam kosheru. And the Gemara explains ela b'Torah atzma. The nekev was in the Torah itself. The shuras habosar hagavoa, the im b'shas habdika nekev yikra, with an eye in yikra yiskachev gam lemala me'atorah posel. Itmar nami Omar of Mori Barmar, Omar Mar Ukva Mar Shmuel, Nikev Torah Atzma V'nistam. If the member was punctured in the corona itself, and then Nistam it was closed up, Kol She'ilu Nikre. If he sees Keri Misrachiv and Nekev, Nikra gam lemala me'atorah posel v'lav kosher. If the situation is one in which, if he were to discharge semen, the hole would rip open and the semen would be discharged through the hole, he is unfit to marry into the congregation, v'lav kosher. But if it would not rip open, he is fit to marry into the congregation. Sholach le Rava Berei the Rabba Rav Yosef. So Rava, the son of Rabba, sent to Rav Yosef. Abdena Rabbeinu teach us. Hechi Avdina. What do we do in the case of a person with such a puncture to arouse him to discharge semen so that we can determine whether or not the hole will reopen? Now, usually the ejaculation of semen outside a woman's body is hotzas zera levatola. But here we want to be machshir him to the kol. So the purpose of his ejaculation is to verify that he's not a krushivcha. And we can be matir him to marry to the kol and have children. Therefore, the discharge of semen does not constitute discharging seed in vain. Hotzas zera levatola is permitted. However, the prohibition against stimulating one's organ with one's hand or foot applies even in such a case. The Gemara inquires as to the permissible way of inducing a seminal discharge. Amalei, Rav Yosef said in response, Maisinon nama chamima de saori. We bring hot barley bread. Umenichem le'abei fukre umikri. Menichem osa al nekev beis harei samach lebeitzim. Umachmas chamimus hapas umischamim umikri umotzi zera. V'chazina le bal yidei kach roim ha'im hanekev nikra umisrachev o nishar kamo shehu. So we place this hot barley bread on the anus, and he discharges semen. The heat of the bread applied in this area will cause him to have a seminal discharge. And we'll observe him. Amar Abai said that in order to bring this nivdak to carry ma'abrinon kame bigdei tziv'onim. Second. We skipped, I'm sorry. Omar Abai, is it possible to bring a person to carry? Is it impossible to bring a person to carry in a different way? Because we cannot be bodekim el al yidei hanochas pas al nekev harei otu kuli alma Yaakov Avinu havi. Is everybody in the level of Yaakov Avinu shemi otzem ptuchasol l'ra keri d'chsiv be Ruven bechoriato kochi reishis oni shelo ra keri miyomov? Is everybody in the world like Yaakov Avinu, about whom it's written, Kochi v'reishis oni, shelo ra keri miyomov? By calling Ruvain reishis oni, my initial figure, he indicated that Ruvain was born of his first seminal discharge. Yaakov was 84 years old at the time that he fathered Ruvain. Thus Abai asks, is everyone as holy as Yaakov, that it is necessary to go to the lengths of the aforementioned device in order to arouse a seminal discharge? Elomar Abaye mavrinon kame bigdei tziv'onim. We arouse him by passing before him the colorful clothing of a woman, which causes him to think about women and provokes a seminal discharge. The reference is apparently to women's clothing rather than the clothing of a particular woman with whom he is acquainted. These are colored clothing that are designated for women to wear, and therefore when he sees them, olal daito laharher. Omar Rava rejects Abai. Otu kule alma. Barzile agil odihu. Is everywhere in the world like Barzilei the Giladi to be aroused and have a seminal discharge merely by looking at the colorful clothing of a woman? The son of David HaMelech, of Shalom, launched a widespread rebellion against his father. David fled Yerushalayim, went to Machanaim across the Yarden. There Barzilai the Giladi and a number of other individuals provided David and his famished followers with food and supplies in Shmuel's Perek Zayin. Subsequently, Avshalom was killed and the rebellion collapsed. As David was making his way back to Yerushalayim, Barzillai came to greet him at Gilgal just before David crossed the Yarden. Desiring to reward Barzillai's loyalty during the rebellion, David invited Barzillai to move to Yerushalayim, live there as an honored pensioner of the king. Barzillai declined, noting that at his advanced age, he was no longer able to enjoy the delicacies of the royal court. For, as he said, I am 80 years old today. Can I distinguish between good and bad? Does your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? It means that Barzillai Hagiladi was shotuf bezima. Ad shezikna koftzolo ve'ibed es chushatam. Ukfi shomer ben shmonim shana nochi hayom ha'eda ben tov l'ram yitam avdecha es asher ochel ves asher eshte. Ve'ilulei ha'shaya shotuf bezima lo ha'yama aved es chushatam. Sharev beis Rebbe Oisa Shivcha Shebegil Tishim Ushtayim Shana Oisa Toemes Me'Akadera Im Atavshilim Nasu Karoi. V'divrei Rava Kan Hem L'Shitaso Shebarzillai Giladi Ibed Es Chuchav Machman Shayit Shakut Bezima. Aval Das Rav Navodazar Chafam Beis is Barzillai Giladi Haya Shakron V'lo Haya Dvarv Emes Kisha Omer She'en Lo Chush Tam Ela Machvarta Kishanina Meikara. We go back to the original answer of Yosef with Hanochas Pasi Orim Chama Ben Nekev Rei. Tanur Rabbanon Nikev Pasul. Nikev Hagid L'mala Me'at-Torah Haro Pasul Milavo Bakol Mishum Krus Shivcha. So one whose member is punctured is unfit to marry into the congregation. Mipnei shehu shoses. Mipnei shezera hazera niyore kechetz derech pia omer el michamimus hatayva hu shoses. Nishpach derech hanekev. Halacha biyadin shekol shekvazer sheniyore kechetz ena mazras. V'nimtza shena roy laholit. But nistam hanekev kosher lovakol mipnei shu chozer lahotzi zera mipiyama bilvad v'yorek kechetzu mol. V'nikev hagid zel psul shechozer lech shero im chozer v'nistam hareu kosher. So one whose member is punctured is unfit to marry into the congregation because he drips. But if the hole becomes sealed, he is fit to marry into the congregation because he can father children. And this is a disqualification that returns to its original state of fitness. The semen drips out through the hole and is not ejaculated, and the Gemara in Chagiga Daf Tes Vav says that any semen that does not shoot out like an arrow is incapable of fertilizing. Zeu limeute mai. It says zeu psul shechozel shera. It must be coming to exclude something. And the Gemara says limeute krum sha'ola machmas maka bria di eno krum. A seal of a scar tissue which was formed on an account of a wound in a lung, eno krum, that is not an effective tissue seal. The Mishnah in Chulin on Mem Beis establishes that an animal whose lung is punctured is a treifa, and our Brisa emphasizes that this is the case in which the disqualification brought about by a puncture is removed if the hole is sealed. Our Brisa is emphasizing by implication that in a different case, namely where scar tissue forms over a hole in the lung, the seal does not produce a return to the original state of validity because the seal will not hold. Hence, when this scar tissues in the lung, known as sirchas area, adhesions of the lung, are found in the animal's lung, the animal is a treifa. Krum sha'ola machmas maka bria. Second. Enokrum. So that we read. Sholach le Rav Idi bar Ovin le'abaye. Hechi avdina. Hech osum refuah legid shenikav l'tzasmo heitev. What medical procedure can we do to seal the hole? So Abaye answers, Maisinon sa'arta, which means bring a barley kernel, umisartina le, and we scratch it, the area of the puncture in the member so that it bleeds. This causes the flesh in the area to rejuvenate and produce connective tissue. Validea pulos hamuros yistamanek v'maisinin tarbe, and we bring fats. V'shaifinon, and we smear it on the wound. V'maisinin shumshuma gamla, and we bring a large ant. Umenachtina le umenichem es rosha shel hanamol b'makom hanekev k'dei shetischaber v'yidbak rosha sham. We place the head of the ant in the hole to get it to bite, which causes its head to remain stuck in the hole. Upaskina le resha, then we cut off its head. The ant's head thus seals the hole, and as it gradually disintegrates, it is replaced by connective tissue. B'meshech hazman, kechol sherosh hanamola holech ubola, disintegrates Cain, holech v'ola basar agid, hashem ischaber u'misrape legamre v'sose manekev litzmitus. V'dafka sa'arta, only a barley kernel should be used when scratching the skin of a low parzala, but not something metal or steel, mizraf zarf, because it would make a wound. Vahani mili, and this procedure applies. Shepulot elu mo'ilos l'rapos es hanekev rak im katan, only if it's a small puncture. Aval hoye gadol ein toeles bekach miklufe mikfal chozer v'niklaf v'shuv niftach hanekev. In the case of a large puncture, any scar tissue that would form would eventually peel off. Omar Rabba Bar Huna. Hamatil mayim mishtei makomos, one who urinates through two places, minekev meiraglayim v'gam minekev hazera, mishum shenikva hamachitza shebein shtei hatzinoros, posel. He's not allowed to come into Kal Yisrael. One who, as a result of an injury through the act of man, passes his urine out of his body through both his urinary tract and his seminal tract. Omar Rava, these two dinim, one from Rabba Bar Rav Huna and one from Aviv Rav Huna, so from Rabba and Rav Huna, less hilchasa, ein halacha l'maisa, lo kibra, below kaba, not like Rabba and not like his father Rav Huna. And Rav is going to explain. Bra, Hodamara, that which he said in the name of Rabba Bar Huna, Shamatul Mai Mishtei Makomos Pasul, the Lamaisa Halachi Shehu Kosher. And the second din of Abba, the Omer of Huna Noshim Mesololos Zu Bezu Psulos L'Kahuna. Women who rub genitals one with the other are disqualified for kahuna. Afilu Rabbi Elazar, the Omer Poni Abala Pnuya Shalol Shem Ishus, Asa Zona Hanimili Ish Aval Isha Pritzusa Bi Alma. So the statement which we cited in the name of Rabbah, that one who urinates through two places unfit to marry the congregation, is rejected by Rava. For only when the semen flows through the urinary tract, that is going to affect the ability to father children. But in this case, where the semen is ejaculated through the semen tube, the fact that the urine it sometimes also passes through that tube does not remove his ability to father children. Now, two women who engage in lesbian relations, the Torah says in Vayikra Chaf Aleph that a Kohen is enjoined from marrying a Zona. Rav Huna maintains that this prohibition also includes women who engage in lesbian relations. The literal translation of Zona is a harlot. Here, it's a legal term referring to a woman who is a convert, an emancipated slave woman, a woman who cohabitated with someone with whom she is forbidden to marry. Rav is the only Tana who maintains that a woman who cohabitated out of wedlock with a person with whom she is permitted to marry is also rendered a Zona and prohibited from marrying a Kohen. But Rava, in refuting Rav Huna's ruling, notes that even Rav Elazar, who maintains that promiscuous activity in itself renders a woman a Zona, would not prohibit a Kohen to marry a woman who engaged in lesbian relations. Since there is no act of cohabitation, Rav Elazar too would concede that this woman is not rendered a Zona and is permitted to marry a Kohen. The act, though, might be biblically prescribed as acts of the land of Egypt. But here he calls it Pritzusa Bi'alma. Not sure Pritzusa Bi'alma means that it's Asur Midoraisa, Lamed Gimel. He quotes in the footnote the Rivan in Shabbos Samach Hey Shematilos Shikva Zera Shekiblu Mibalei. Tosas rejects that, and he quotes that Avud Dishmol also Libnotzav Lishon Achas Samach Lishnia Mishum Nashim Amesolo Zu Bezu Mashma Shelo Hoyu Nisuos Yafal Pikain also Nesolos Mashma Pritzus Shenoshim Alolo Misnagos Bepritzus Zu Im Zu. And this leads us to the Mishnah at the beginning of the wide lines here on Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph. But the hour is late, and we'll have to pick this up in Mirz Hashem tomorrow.